It was supposed to be just another ordinary day for Neil Hartman. A quiet man, mid-40s, ex-military turned mechanic, Neil lived in a peaceful neighborhood in the outskirts of Portland. His pride and joy? A meticulously restored 1969 Dodge Charger, a relic of his youth and the only thing he truly allowed himself to be sentimental about. But when a group of reckless teens decided to destroy it as part of a viral prank, they didn't just vandalize a car. They awakened something in Neil that had been buried for years. And now, they would come to learn the hard way. Revenge has a name. Before we begin today's story, please let us know where you are viewing from. Please remember to subscribe if you like this video. It all started on a cool Friday evening. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting a long shadow across Neil's driveway. He had just finished polishing the Charger for the third time that week. The black paint shimmered under the porch light like obsidian glass. For Neil, the car wasn't just a vehicle, it was a memory on wheels. A piece of the past he clung to after everything else had slipped away. His wife, gone in a car accident 15 years ago. His son, estranged, living somewhere in Arizona with a family Neil had never met. That car had been with him through it all, a symbol of endurance, of survival. But someone else saw it differently. A trio of teenagers, Bryce, Tyler and Mandy, had recently started a YouTube channel. Their goal? Instant fame. Their method? Chaos. They called themselves Control Z, because their motto was, "Life has no undo button, so we'll hit it for you." They were into destruction, humiliation, and shock value. And in their twisted minds, vandalizing a vintage car in the dead of night would be the kind of content that would launch them into viral stardom. It was Tyler who scoped out the neighborhood. His cousin lived 2 blocks over, and told him about a weird guy who lived alone and barely spoke to anyone. "He's always working on this old car," the cousin had said. "Like, obsessed with it. It's creepy." That was all the group needed to hear. At 2:14 a.m., the trio crept up to Neil's house, wearing ski masks and black hoodies. Armed with cans of spray paint, crowbars and fireworks, they set to work. They slashed the tires, smashed the headlights, spray-painted vulgar words across the doors and hood. Then, for the grand finale, Bryce lit a Roman candle and fired it through the driver's side window, igniting the interior. It all lasted less than 3 minutes. They laughed the whole way back to their car, unaware that a small blinking red light above Neil's garage door had captured the entire act. Every face, every voice, every act of destruction. Neil didn't find the wreckage until 6 a.m. when he came outside with a mug of black coffee and a plan to take the Charger for a short cruise. What he found instead stopped him cold. His breath caught in his throat. His eyes didn't blink. And then, slowly, his hand curled into a fist. It wasn't just the damage. It was the violation. The deliberate cruelty. And above all, the laughter he later heard in the security footage. That's what broke something in him. He didn't call the police. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. Instead, Neil Hartman went back inside and began to plan. The first thing Neil did was enhance the footage. Years ago, during his time in the military, he had worked in a surveillance unit. Old habits die hard. He uploaded the camera footage to his laptop, ran it through a few programs, cleaned the image, and slowed the frame rate. Faces began to take shape. Voices, once muffled, became clearer. Bryce's distinctive laugh. Tyler's sharp nasal tone. Mandy's anxious pacing. From there, Neil began the process of identification. He knew how to hunt. He'd done it for a living. He visited the nearby high schools, posing as a substitute teacher and quietly observing lunch crowds. It didn't take long to find them. The trio was loud, cocky, and constantly filming themselves for their prank channel. Neil watched from afar, taking notes. He wasn't interested in immediate retaliation. That would be too easy. No, Neil wanted them to feel what he felt. To be haunted. To live in fear of the unknown. He wanted them to realize that some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. The first step of his revenge came subtly. He created a burner YouTube account under the name Echo Reaper, and subscribed to Control Z. Then he began leaving cryptic comments on their videos. You broke something you can't fix. Ever feel like you're being watched? Your last prank was your last mistake. They laughed it off at first, even read the comments out loud in their next video. But then things escalated. Neil waited until Tyler was home alone one night. He slipped into his backyard, cut the power, and left an envelope taped to the sliding glass door. Inside was a single photo. Tyler standing beside the burning charger, a red X marked over his face. The next day, Bryce found a USB stick in his locker at school. On it was a silent video. Security footage of the trio destroying the car, played on loop, with their real names and addresses flashing across the screen. Mandy, the most nervous of the three, found a note on her car windshield. He's not calling the cops. He's coming for us. They began to panic. They stopped posting videos. They deleted their social media accounts. But Neil had already gathered everything he needed. The hunter had them in his sights. One by one, Neil turned the tables. Tyler was first. Neil rigged a car alarm to go off whenever Tyler's phone received a notification. One night, Neil lured him into a trap. A sound-triggered warehouse where motion sensors activated strobe lights and speakers blared the sound of a revving engine mixed with static. Tyler ran blindly into a wall and knocked himself out cold. When he woke, he found his hands zip-tied and a note pinned to his chest. I let you live. This time. Bryce was next. Neil hacked into his phone and sent him a fake emergency broadcast warning about a suspected stalker targeting local teenagers. The message included footage of Neil's own security cam, edited to show Bryce's face, with the words, "Suspect," underneath. Bryce went to the police, panicked, only to find the footage had vanished and no report had been filed. But Mandy got the worst of it. Neil didn't want to hurt her. But he did want her to understand. So he staged an abduction, complete with black van, blindfold, and a recording of tire screeches and screaming engines played in a loop while she sat restrained in a garage. When the blindfold was finally removed, Mandy found herself in an empty room, seated in front of a TV, playing footage of the charger in flames. Underneath, the words, "This is what you took from me." She was let go unharmed. But the damage was done. All three began to experience night terrors. They stopped sleeping, stopped going to school. The Control Z channel went dark. Their parents, unaware of what was happening, assumed it was drugs or peer pressure. But Neil wasn't finished. He sent one final message. A package arrived at each of their houses. Inside, a 1/18 scale die-cast model of the 1969 Dodge Charger, burned and broken in the same pattern as the real one. And a card that read, "This was never about the car. It was about respect." Neil never saw the trio again. They transferred schools, moved towns, disappeared from the internet. He didn't pursue them. He didn't need to. They had already been punished, not by the law, but by fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of justice without warning. Neil repaired the charger, piece by piece. It would never be exactly the same. But neither was he. Some damage, after all, can't be undone. But sometimes, it can be avenged. What would you have done in Neil's place? Would you seek revenge, or let justice take its course? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more true stories with twists, justice, and shocking turns, be sure to check out our other videos. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You never know what story is coming next. Would you like me to continue with the next 6,000 words, deepening the twists and extending the revenge arc further? The story didn't end with the destroyed YouTube channel or the frightened teens. Not for Neil. Because something had been awakened in him, something cold and methodical. It wasn't just about the car anymore. That car had simply been the final match dropped on a pile of old dry kindling. For Neil, the fire had been building for years. You see, Neil had once been a reconnaissance specialist during a covert operation overseas. He'd built his life on discipline, silence, and precision. But when he returned home, that world didn't make room for men like him. He had watched as justice in the real world became something subjective, something delayed, something negotiated. And when that trio of reckless kids vandalized his charger, they didn't just bring back memories of war. They made Neil realize how far society had fallen, and how much he had tolerated it. So Neil didn't stop at fear. He moved on to something worse, reputation. He knew the power of perception, and how easily it could be weaponized. Neil began researching their social circles. He found every person they had wronged or mocked on their rise to internet infamy. Former friends, ex-girlfriends, even teachers. And then he contacted them, not directly, but through anonymous tips, leaked footage, and meticulously timed posts. He sent their cruelest pranks to local authorities, to school counselors, to their neighbors. Bryce's mom received a flash drive in the mail, containing a video of Bryce stealing a homeless man's sign and urinating on it. It was 3 months old, never posted, but still stored in a forgotten corner of their editing laptop, which Neil had remotely accessed via an old cloud link they forgot to secure. Tyler's college application was flagged after someone submitted a complaint with evidence of academic dishonesty. Screenshots of Tyler using ChatGPT to write fake apology essays to bullied students, intended as a prank, circulated among school administrators. His scholarship was quietly rescinded. Mandy's father, a local business owner, got an anonymous call from a concerned parent with proof of his daughter's involvement in what he called hate-fueled vandalism. She was grounded indefinitely. Her phone taken. Her car sold. At school, whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into rumors, and soon they weren't just the kids who stopped posting. They were the kids everyone avoided. Everyone suspected. Everyone talked about behind closed doors. But Neil still wasn't done. Because something still didn't sit right with him. He hadn't taught them why it was wrong. That lesson was still coming. Neil began constructing a psychological labyrinth. He called it Project Mirror. Its goal, to turn their own tactics against them. To show them the damage they'd done, the lives they'd humiliated, and to force them to feel it for themselves. For Bryce, Neil used a fabricated social media campaign. He created several fake online personas, people who seemed real, with posts dating back years. These personas began interacting with Bryce online, slowly building trust. Then, one of them pretended to be a girl from a nearby school. She sent Bryce a message claiming she was a huge fan of his channel back in the day. Flattered, Bryce responded. Over the course of 3 weeks, Neil used this fake identity to coax Bryce into opening up about his pranks, about his regrets, about how he thought maybe, deep down, some of the things they'd done were a little too far. Then Neil flipped the switch. The fake profiles suddenly shared their entire chat publicly, out of context, edited to make Bryce look like a manipulative predator trying to groom a minor. Within hours, Bryce's name was trending locally. Neil knew the truth would eventually come out. But the damage to Bryce's self-image was immediate. Friends stopped replying. Even Tyler and Mandy distanced themselves. Bryce didn't go back to school that week. Or the next. With Tyler, Neil used a more traditional method, entrapment. He hired a private investigator to pose as a journalist for an underground documentary about youth influence and rebellion. The investigator arranged a meeting with Tyler, promising that the film would help tell his side of the story. Tyler showed up. Nervous, eager, still hopeful for some kind of comeback. Neil watched the meeting from a van across the street. The investigator asked all the right questions. What made you start Control Z? Did you ever regret anything? What was the wildest thing you ever got away with? Tyler, being Tyler, bragged. He smirked. He described how he laughed while lighting the fireworks in Neil's car, calling it the biggest bang for the buck we ever pulled off. The interview was over in 20 minutes. The footage was uploaded anonymously to a parenting forum in Portland. Within a week, it made its way to a local news station. That interview, combined with the previous leaked footage, cemented Tyler's new reputation. Not just a delinquent, but a sociopath. His parents pulled him out of school. The college retraction was now public knowledge. His social circle evaporated. And Neil watched it all. Mandy, however, posed the biggest challenge. She had retreated. Disconnected. Neil could tell she was breaking from within. And part of him hesitated. He started getting flashbacks to his own son Mason. Mason had been headstrong. Impulsive. Prone to falling in with the wrong crowd. Neil had tried to discipline it out of him, but that only pushed Mason further away. Was Mandy like Mason? Neil waited. Weeks passed. Until one day, Neil found a letter taped to his own front door. It read, "I know what you're doing. I know it's you. Please stop. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Not because I got caught, but because I understand now. I really do. I dream about the fire. I can't close my eyes without hearing it. I wish I could undo what we did. I wish I could go back and tell the others to stop. But I didn't. And now I get it. You don't want justice. You want us to see the world the way you do. Broken. Scorched. And unforgiving. Well, I see it now. I really do." It wasn't signed. But Neil didn't need a signature. He read the letter 3 times. Then burned it in the fireplace. For the first time in months, he felt something crack through the ice. Maybe remorse wasn't dead after all. But fate wasn't finished with Neil, either. Because someone had been watching him. A neighbor. A retired schoolteacher named Evelyn Marks. She had always found Neil odd. Too quiet, too precise, too distant. And ever since the vandalism, she had noticed odd behaviors. People showing up late at night. Strange packages. Surveillance equipment being installed in the garage. She called the police. Told them she feared Neil was planning something. She even handed over footage from her own Ring camera of Neil dragging a mannequin into his garage, which he had used during Mandy's psychological scare. An officer came to the door. Neil greeted him politely. "I've received reports that you've been staging certain events, possibly threatening local miners." Neil didn't flinch. He invited the officer inside, offered coffee, played it calm. "Do you have any evidence of a crime, officer?" Neil asked. The officer hesitated. "Not at this time." "Then we're done here," Neil said, smiling. "Unless you want to charge me with mannequins." The officer left. But Neil felt it, a shift in the wind. He realized something he hadn't considered. He was becoming them. The very thing he hated. Using fear. Exploiting weakness. Operating above consequence. And that terrified him more than anything. Neil made a decision that night. He packed a small box. Inside, a USB drive with every recording, every message, every digital footprint of what he had done. He included a handwritten letter addressed to the 3 who forgot consequences. The letter explained everything. Why he did it. What it cost him. What he hoped they would take away. He left the box on the steps of their old high school, addressed to the principal with a request. "Read this only if they return." Then he drove the Charger, now fully restored, up the Pacific Coast Highway and kept going. Past the city. Past the memories. Past the point of no return. Neil's story became a local legend. Some say he disappeared into the mountains. Others say he joined a group of veterans living off-grid. And a few believe he still watches, waiting for the next group of careless souls who confuse destruction for entertainment. As for Bryce, Tyler, and Mandy, they each went on with their lives. Quietly. Carefully. Bryce changed his name and moved to Nebraska. He now works in IT, never talks about his past. Tyler went through therapy. Lots of it. He's currently studying criminal justice. Mandy? She started volunteering at a local garage, helping restore old cars. And every once in a while, she sees a black Charger drive by in the distance. But it's probably just her imagination. Or maybe, just maybe, it's Neil. Watching. Making sure they remember. 6 months had passed since Neil drove off into the horizon. The streets had changed. Control Z was dead. The trio had scattered. But something strange had begun happening in the town Neil left behind. New pranks started surfacing. Ones far more cruel. Not just property damage anymore. Now they were public humiliations. People lured under false pretenses. Social media blackmail. Destruction of careers. And the pranks were being signed by someone calling themselves Control X. The tag appeared in footage watermarked across social media clips, always accompanied by a chilling phrase. "You erased the wrong one. Now I'll erase everything." It was like Control Z reborn, but darker. And meaner. Local law enforcement thought it was just a copycat. But those who remembered the car fire? The psychological takedowns? They knew it wasn't coincidence. Tyler did. He recognized the editing style immediately. Quick cuts. Overlaid text in neon red. Sharp sound effects designed to induce anxiety. It was Neil's hand, but not Neil's restraint. Except it wasn't Neil. Because Neil was hundreds of miles away in Northern California. Living under an alias. Restoring vintage motorcycles. Keeping his head low and his presence quieter than ever. Until he got a package. No return address. Inside was a flash drive. He hesitated before plugging it in. The video was short. 47 seconds. A jittery, glitch-filled montage of the new pranks ravaging his old town. Students duct-taped to poles. Teachers ambushed during Zoom calls. A police officer's car spray-painted with the words, "Erase authority." And at the end, a simple line in all caps. "The erased have risen." Then static. Then the final frame, a black and white photo of Neil, taken from behind, on a cliffside road. His charger in the background. The timestamp? Just 2 weeks ago. Neil froze. Someone had found him. And worse, they wanted to carry on what he started. Back in town, Mandy couldn't sleep. Every morning she found more destruction. Her garage window was smashed one morning. A threatening note was left the next. "You think redemption buys you peace? Think again." At first she thought it was Bryce or Tyler, trying to get back at her for leaving them behind. But the more she saw, the more she realized, this was bigger. This was personal. But not to her. To Neil. One night, she stood outside the auto shop where she now worked and looked at the scorched remains of a burned-out pickup. Her boss had quit 2 days earlier. No one wanted to stick around. The attacks were too close. Mandy took out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Neil's number was long deleted. But she had kept one thing, an old burner email he once used to leak one of their clips. She didn't think he'd ever see it, but she typed out a message anyway. "They're back. Or someone is. Using your name. Hurting people. I think you should know." She hit send. She didn't expect a reply. But 6 hours later, she got one. "I'll handle it." That was all Neil wrote. But it was enough. Neil didn't sleep that night. He reviewed the footage again and again. The techniques. The psychology behind it. Whoever was behind Control X had studied him closely, too closely. This wasn't a stranger. This was a shadow. So Neil did what he always did. He hunted. His first stop was an old VPN trail, masking layers that hid Control X's IP address. But there was a mistake. In one upload, the prankster forgot to reroute their signal. Neil traced it to a public library in Portland. He drove 6 hours to get there, arriving at dawn. He posed as a maintenance inspector and got access to the library's security footage. And there, clear as day, he saw something that chilled him to his core. The uploader was a teenager. No older than 17. But not just any teenager. Mason. His son. Neil nearly collapsed. The image looped in his mind. Mason with longer hair, a scar on his cheek, dressed in black, sitting at a terminal. Calm. Focused. A ghost. He hadn't seen his son in 4 years. Not since their final fight. the screaming match that ended in Mason leaving with a duffel bag and a promise never to return. But here he was, following his father's footsteps in the worst way possible. Neil drove to the last known address Mason had used, a dilapidated rental on the edge of the industrial district. He parked the Charger a block away, observing first. Classic protocol. No rash moves. The place was quiet. A light flickered inside. Graffiti on the mailbox. Trash bags in the yard. Neil approached slowly. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Footsteps inside. Then the door opened, just a crack. A single eye stared back. Mason. Then the door opened wider. "Dad," he said. Not with anger. Not with fear. But with a smile. They sat across from each other in silence. The living room was empty, except for 2 milk crates and a mattress on the floor. Cables ran everywhere, hooked up to laptops, monitors, surveillance screens. It was a command center. And it looked exactly like Neil's old garage. "You taught me how to hide," Mason said. "But not how to heal. So I did what you did." Neil didn't respond. "I saw the videos," Mason continued. "What you did to those kids, it was art. You made them feel what they made others feel. And you didn't even have to touch them." Neil finally spoke. "That wasn't justice. It was a mistake I tried to correct." "But it worked," Mason said. "You stopped them. You made them remember. I thought you'd be proud." Neil stood. "This isn't pride, Mason. This is a warning. You're going too far." Mason laughed bitterly. "Too far? Like you did when you burned that kid's scholarship? Or when you made that girl think her house was haunted?" "I stopped before I became what they were." "No," Mason said. "You just left. And now you want to pretend it didn't happen. But I'm not running. I'm finishing what you started." Neil stared at him. The boy he raised. Now a stranger. Yet terrifyingly familiar. "Mason, listen to me carefully," Neil said, voice low. "If you don't stop, I'll erase everything you built. And I won't leave a trace." Mason's jaw clenched. "Then I guess we both know what comes next." The next few weeks were a chess game. Neil began dismantling Control X. One by one, he located their cloud backups, passwords, and access points. Mason had become arrogant, leaving trails. Neil hit back with silent precision, deleting accounts, replacing clips with blank screens, uploading apology statements masked as confessions. Mason retaliated harder. Neil's aliases were exposed. His safe house torched. A video of Neil threatening Mason, from their first meeting, was leaked, with audio doctored to make Neil sound violent. The community turned on him. Even Mandy reached out again, this time with fear. "I saw the clip. Is it true? Are you hurting him now?" Neil didn't answer. He knew the only way to end this was to confront Mason publicly. And so Neil did the unthinkable. He staged a final confrontation. In the very garage where the Charger had been rebuilt. He sent Mason the invite in code, coordinates, timestamp, phrase, Control-Z returns. Mason showed up. Camera crew in tow. Livestream ready. He expected a showdown. But Neil had another plan. He stepped into the camera's frame, live across dozens of devices. And for the first time, he faced not just Mason, but everyone watching. "I am Neil Ransom," he said. "And I am the reason this war started." He told the truth. Every dark detail. The vandalism. The revenge. The manipulation. The regret. "I wanted justice," he said. "But justice without discipline becomes chaos. And I taught my son chaos." He turned to Mason. "I failed you." The chat exploded. Viewers divided. Some praised Neil. Others condemned him. But Mason stood frozen. The cameras kept rolling. And for the first time, Mason lowered his mask. "Why are you doing this?" He whispered. "Because someone has to break the cycle," Neil said. Then he walked off screen, leaving Mason alone. Live. Vulnerable. Seen. And something in that moment cracked. The stream ended. Control LX was never updated again. Mason disappeared from public view. Some say he changed his name. Others claim he became a counselor for at-risk youth. Neil never confirmed either. Mandy still runs the garage. Tyler is back in school. Bryce moved abroad and writes under a pen name. And Neil? He still drives the Charger. But he doesn't stay anywhere too long. Because he knows the truth now. Revenge is loud. But redemption? Redemption is quiet. And sometimes the loudest revenge is silence. Months passed and for a time, peace lingered. The town where it all started slowly returned to normal. No more tags on school lockers. No edited humiliation videos. No eerie Control X clips going viral overnight. People breathed easier. Businesses reopened. Teachers taught without fear. Neil stayed out of sight. He relocated once again, this time to the outskirts of Colorado. A tiny mountain town where no one asked questions and every neighbor minded their own business. He worked odd jobs, mechanic work, trail maintenance, snowplow driving in the winter. The Charger remained in storage. Untouched. Preserved. Like a monument to a war no one truly won. But despite the quiet, Neil didn't sleep much. Because even when you bury a legacy, it doesn't stay buried forever. The first sign something was wrong came in the form of an email. No subject line. No sender. Just a blank message, with a single attachment. An image of a chalk outline on pavement. Underneath, spray-painted in bold, blood-red letters. Control AL Ternate delete. Neil closed the email. He told himself it was a prank. Until the news broke 2 days later. A high school principal in Illinois found his car flipped over in a faculty parking lot. Surveillance showed masked teens circling it, laughing, filming. The incident quickly went viral. Discipline gets deleted. The caption read, "The attackers? Unknown." But Neil saw it in the background of the clip. A symbol. 3 keys drawn in a triangle. Control, alternate, and delete. This wasn't random. This was escalation. He began researching again, against his own judgment. New clips surfaced every week. Teachers drenched in paint. Local judges swatted during live streams. Corrupt systems deserve to crash, the caption read. Each video signed the same way. Control, alternate, and delete. The media labeled it the new digital cult. A hacker collective. A group of vigilante teens spread across the country, inspired by the now legendary legends of Control Z and Control X. But Neil saw deeper. These weren't just kids playing games. They were students of revenge. And he knew who their teacher had been. Mandy called one night. "Did you see it?" she asked, voice low. "That video with the fire in the principal's office?" "I saw," Neil said. "I think it's spreading," she whispered. "They're calling themselves the Reboot. Kids at my shop talk about them like urban legends." "They're not legends," Neil said. "They're disciples." "You started something, Neil," she added. "I know. What are you going to do?" And after a long pause, Neil gave her the only answer he had. "I'm going to find their leader." His search took him to Philadelphia, where the most recent attack had occurred. A librarian had been fired after being falsely accused of racist behavior in a deepfake video. Neil recognized the structure immediately. AI audio spliced over real surveillance footage. The caption read, "Those who silence truth deserve deletion." He embedded himself near the scene, acting as a janitor for a community center nearby. For weeks he listened, watched, waited. Then he saw it, a flyer. An anonymous digital ethics group meeting. Location, Warehouse District. Topic, the rise of digital reckonings. It was the kind of bait Neil would have used years ago. He went. The warehouse was dimly lit, with folding chairs and a projector screen. About 30 people attended. Students, tech hobbyists, rogue hackers, and a few suspiciously silent adults. A woman in her 20s stood at the front, clicking through slides. Her name was Kira. And as she spoke, Neil realized something chilling. She wasn't mimicking his tactics. She was weaponizing his philosophy. The digital age created new crimes, she said. So, it's only fair we invent new justice. The justice that fits the crime. Emotional destruction gets emotional exposure. She clicked. Footage played. A man screaming after his wife discovered his affair, via an edited social media prank. Laughter spread through the room. "Welcome to Control-Alt-Del," she said. Neil stood in the back, silent, unnoticed, until someone looked up. And everything stopped. A teenager pointed. "That's him." Kira turned. Their eyes met. And her smile faded. The crowd erupted. Voices shouted. Cameras came out. "It's him. That's Control-Z." Neil backed away, slow but firm. He exited through a side door, ducked into an alley, and disappeared into the shadows. By morning, his face was all over the underground forums. Control-Z returns? Is the original eraser back? Control-Z versus Control, alternate, and delete. War of the generations. Neil knew it wouldn't stop there. They would hunt him now. But he wasn't afraid. Because this time, he didn't come to erase. He came to end. Kira reached out to him the next day, digitally, through a cloaked channel. The message was simple. "We're not enemies. We're your evolution. Meet me. Talk. Or watch it all burn." She left coordinates. Neil went. It was a rooftop, abandoned, cold, moonlit. Kira was already there, standing with arms folded, wind whipping through her jacket. "You created the blueprint," she said. "We just refined it. Your revenge was beautiful. Efficient. Clean. But you stopped. We didn't." "You misunderstood everything," Neil replied. "Did I?" "You humiliated people who had it coming. You exposed lies, bullies, manipulators. That girl with the baseball bat? You made her sob in front of the whole school. Don't tell me that wasn't justice." "It wasn't justice. It was pain. Mine, redirected." Kira stepped forward. "We're just continuing what you started. Only now there's no mercy." Neil stared at her. "You think you're righteous," he said. "But all you've done is give angry people permission to destroy others in the name of a cause they don't understand. You're not fixing anything. You're feeding the same monster I tried to starve." She looked at him, defiant. "Then stop us." Neil turned and walked away. But he wasn't done. Not yet. The final phase of his plan required exposure. So Neil went public. He uploaded a confession video, unedited, raw. He told the story from the beginning. The charger. The prank. The revenge. The burning. The rise of Control-Z. His attempt at redemption. And now his warning. "This isn't justice," he said into the camera. "This is theater. And it will destroy you, like it almost destroyed me." Within hours, the video spread like wildfire. Some called him a liar. Some called him a hero. But most importantly, some of Control, alternate, and delete. Followers began to question. And that's when the splintering began. Kira doubled down. More stunts. More viral chaos. But now, for every new post there were critics. Anonymous insiders revealing the editing tricks. The manipulations. The setups. This one was staged. This victim was innocent. They're faking justice for clout. Neil began working with some of those insiders, including one unexpected ally. Mason. His son. Mason re-emerged quietly. He'd been watching everything. And for the first time, he agreed with his father. "This isn't about control anymore," he said. "It's about destruction. I can help stop it." Together, they formed a counterplan. Mason infiltrated Control-Alt-Del forums. Neil mapped the operation's infrastructure. And then, one by one, they exposed Kira's lies. The breaking point came when Neil and Mason released a series of emails, leaked from Kira's inner circle, showing that several of Control, Alternate, and Delete. Most viral videos had been staged. Actors, paid extras, even some victims had been in on it, for the fame. The backlash was immediate. Control, Alternate, and Delete collapsed within weeks. Kira vanished from the public eye. No one knows where she went. Some say she fled the country. Others believe she was blackmailed into silence. But Neil? He didn't celebrate. He just returned to his quiet life. This time, with Mason visiting every few weeks. They talked more now. Sometimes about the past. Mostly about the future. Mandy visited once. She brought her daughter. Introduced Neil as an old friend who used to fix broken things. Mandy pulled him aside after dinner. "You really stopped it, didn't you?" she asked. "For now," he replied. "And if it comes back?" He looked out at the trees, wind rustling through pine. "Then I'll be ready." Because Neil understood something now. Revenge is never satisfied. It evolves, changes masks, finds new hosts. But so does redemption. And the only way to truly erase a legacy is to write a better one. Neil thought it was over. The war had ended. The masks had dropped. The noise quieted. But peace doesn't mean silence. Because true legacies don't just fade. They echo. Even in stillness, they hum beneath the surface, waiting for the next soul to stumble into their rhythm. And one cold morning, Neil heard the hum again. It came in the form of a letter. Real paper. Real ink. No stamp. Just folded beneath the windshield wiper of his old pickup. Inside, one sentence. Control Z never finished what he started. No signature. No clue. Just those 7 words. But it was enough. Neil showed it to Mason. They were chopping firewood behind the cabin. Mason read it twice, then looked up. "Someone wants you back in the game." "I'm not playing," Neil said. "Are you sure?" Mason asked. "Because it sounds like someone else's." That night, Neil searched the forums. He'd been avoiding them for months, trying to rebuild something real. But in the quiet corners of the internet, something new had emerged. Conral F. Find and destroy. That was their motto. Their targets? Not just bullies, not just corrupt systems, anyone who had ever crossed someone online. A waitress with a bad Yelp review. A delivery driver who was late. A teacher who gave a failing grade. Every mistake recorded. Amplified. Weaponized. They didn't just humiliate their targets. They ruined their lives. And they claimed to do it, in honor of Control Z. It was déjà vu. But worse. Faster. Sharper. More savage. And as Neil scrolled, he saw something terrifying. Mason's name. Listed on a kill list. Photos from his college days. Clips from an old debate. Comments taken out of context. "Control F is coming for you," one caption read. That was it. Neil made a choice. One final mission. Not to punish. Not to erase. But to end the cycle. Mason resisted at first. "We can't keep doing this," he said. "Every time we push back, something new grows. Revenge doesn't go away. It mutates." But Neil shook his head. "This isn't about revenge," he said. "It's about stopping the lie that I started." So they formed a plan. And this time, it wasn't about shadows. It was about light. Truth. Transparency. They would unmask Control F. Not destroy them. But reveal them. Expose their cowardice. Break the illusion. And let the world decide. It started with digital tracing. Control F operated through heavily encrypted social platforms. But every message left fingerprints. Time zones. Keyboard rhythms. ISP signals. They tracked the core messages to a location in San Jose, California. A warehouse. Of course. But this wasn't a grimy hacker's den. It was a startup. Control F was being run by a media firm. A team of marketers and viral engineers had weaponized revenge culture. They didn't believe in justice. They didn't even care about victims. They cared about clicks. Every ruined life? Monetized. Every outrage? Sold to ad companies. Neil's stomach turned. He wasn't fighting a cult anymore. He was fighting a business. They needed proof. Real proof. So Mason went undercover. He posed as a freelance editor. Got hired by the firm. And what he uncovered shattered any remaining doubts. Scripts. Yes, scripts. For takedowns. Premeditated viral attacks, written weeks in advance. Complete with fake reactions, edited text chains, AI-enhanced victim tears, and digital mobs standing by. Neil saw it all. And he realized something. They had taken his revenge, and turned it into reality TV. That night he couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, fists clenched, heart burning. But it wasn't rage. It was shame. And clarity. There was only one way to fix this. He had to come forward. All the way. Neil and Mason prepared a documentary. Raw. Unforgiving. They exposed the firm. Interviewed former employees. Tracked the victims. Some had attempted suicide. Some had gone into hiding. Some had lost everything. The documentary showed how it all began, with a vandalized car. And how one act of revenge, however justified it seemed, had grown into a plague. They called it Control Z, the legacy of revenge. They released it online. For free. It spread like wildfire. The media picked it up. Celebrities shared it. Lawmakers watched it. And for the first time, people saw the full picture. Not a hero. Not a villain. Just a man who made a choice. And the world that followed. The firm was shut down within weeks. Lawsuits reigned. The victims finally had names, faces, and people to hold accountable. But Neil didn't celebrate. He didn't speak to the press. He didn't write a book. He disappeared. For good. They say he moved to a cabin deeper in the mountains. Off-grid. No phone. No internet. Just trees. Mason visits once a year, bringing him supplies. Sometimes they fish. Sometimes they don't speak for hours. And that's enough. But sometimes, Mason gets letters. No return address. Just messages, folded neatly. One read. You did good. Let it go. Another. Truth isn't revenge. It's the only way out. And once. I forgive them. No signature. But Mason knows who writes them. And maybe that's the true end. Not with flames. Not with a twist. But with silence. With peace. With a man, once broken, finally still. Because revenge never satisfies. But letting go? That just might. From a single act of vandalism to a digital war of ideologies, Neil's path of revenge left destruction, but also redemption. By facing the monster he created, he finally found peace. Not in payback but in truth. What do you think? Does revenge ever really solve anything? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story, check out our other shocking tales of justice, betrayal, and redemption. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay curious.